And the Federal Executive Council on Wednesday gave approval to NNPC to acquire a 20% stake in Dangote Refinery in Lagos. The state-owned oil agency intends to be a minority shareholder in the company, which has the capacity to refine 650,000 barrels of crude oil daily. So what does this mean, not just for the parties, but for Nigeria's economy as a whole? We're being joined by Bismarck Rewane, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company, who is going to dissect all of this. Good morning, Mr. Rewane. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Good morning for having me. Yeah.
Right, NNPC surprisingly, of course, announced that it's going to be paying a dividend. That should be probably by September this year. And then FEC subsequently announced the approval for NNPC to acquire a 20% stake in Dangote Refinery. So are these two decisions in any way linked, or is it just a coincidence?
They're not linked directly, but they're linked indirectly. So let's start off by actually seeing what does NNPC do and what's the plan of NNPC going forward. And then let us see whether there's a mutually reinforcing or mutually beneficial relationship between Nigeria, the government, NNPC, an oil regulator, cum producer, right, national oil company, and then Dangote Refinery and other refineries for that matter. So let's start off by saying that NNPC is under pressure. NNPC has having what they call under recovery subsidies, and therefore have been unable to remit money to the Federation account recently. Then, surprisingly, they decided to declare a dividend. Dividend also has to be paid in cash to the federal government. So you know they have the LNG model where MDAs, corporations, and investments remit their surplus or remit their dividends to the Federation account. This has affected the amount of FAC that states and the federal government have been sharing. Now, what does this mean particularly? It means that Nigeria, NNPC, are doing this. I mean, this conspiracy theory is that NNPC would like to list on the Nigerian exchange, all right? And to list, you must have declared dividend in the prior 3 years. That's the fundamental thing. Okay. Is that going to happen? That's a different thing. But the beauty, if that happened, because of disclosure requirements, transparency requirements, and all of that, NNPC is going to be much more transparent and much more accountable. There's no question about that. Now, subsequently, the next day or the day after, the Federal Executive Council approves the acquisition of a 20% stake in the Dangote Refinery and Petrochemical and Fertilizer Complex. So we can take it as independent events, but at the same time, any discerning investor will take a look and say, it is inextricably linked, but not directly linked.
Okay, but the typical process is for a state-owned enterprise to be, privatized, and not for governments to acquire stakes in private companies. What is the meaning of this reverse process we have here?
Yes, it is true that normally what happens is that you privatize state-owned enterprises, you liberalize the industry, and you deregulate the pricing mechanism. That is the normal, typical process. But at times, you go against it for peculiar reasons. For example, Aramco is the largest oil producing company in the world. They had the largest IPO. This morning, they declared a massive dividend. And they said, it's not, in fact, they're going to give more. I think 500 and something billion, $58 billion or something like that. Now, NNPC is acquiring a stake in Dangote Refinery and other modular refineries. But why would NNPC be doing that at a time when there's a reversal? So what is in it? What is in this transaction for NNPC and what is in it for the Nigerian government? Let's break it down. NNPC is committed to providing, to making sure that Nigerians get refined products. That is petrol, diesel, kerosene, and all of the others. And we'll come back to that in a minute. NNPC is also charged with responsibility to ensure that Nigeria's share of the joint venture crude gets sold. NNPC is also charged with being on a joint venture and having production sharing contracts through NAPIMS with IOCs. So if NNPC has a stake in Dangote Refinery, what does it mean? It means that at least it is guaranteed the refined products. And what for refined products? There's diesel, there's PMS, there's AGO, there's dual-purpose kerosene, which is aviation fuel. And I'll take aviation fuel in particular. Right? The aviation industry contributes 535 billion naira to the economy. Right? Since COVID, that sector actually suffered globally. Yeah. Before, Nigeria has about 1.7 million international passengers, about 6 million passengers a year in 2019. Of these passengers, for every 100 Nigerian passengers, the 5 most important destinations to Nigerians were as follows. 17 out of 100 Nigerians traveling abroad went to the UK. Okay? And 13 of those passengers going abroad went to the United States. No, actually 15. 13 went to Dubai. 4 out of 100 went to, 8 out of 100 went to Ghana, and 4 out of 100 went to Saudi Arabia. Those are the most important destinations. And within the United States, number 1 destination was Houston. Number 2 is Atlanta. Number 3 is Washington, D.C. I'm just trying to give some breakdown as to aviation fuel and aviation, the recovery of aviation. Yeah. Let us talk about cooking kerosene, talk about gas, talk about petrochemicals, talk about diesel. So all of these things. So it's not just NNPC and Dangote refining products, but the industries that use the refined products who alternatively had to go through a tough process to get it. What is in it for Dangote? Why should Dangote be selling? Mm-hmm. Well, Dangote wants, the refinery is of no use if it doesn't have crude. Mm-hmm. If it has NNPC having an equity stake, it means that at least it's assured of crude coming to the refinery. Dangote wants to be sure that he has a market to sell into, especially in Nigeria. Don't forget, the refinery is a hub process which takes off the whole of West Africa, right? So Dangote wants to ensure, or the Dangote refinery, that it gets a market here in Nigeria. And that's good because it's modern, it's cutting-edge technology. Its costs are probably about 30% lower than the rest of the world. So
we can expect competition?
Yeah. No, okay. there will be competition. There will be competition. Any industry that doesn't have competition is, right? So there must be competition here, right? So,
and particularly with the Port Harcourt refinery and the Warri refinery and Kaduna refinery, hopefully
ones coming on
board.
It's interesting how much we are spending on rehabilitation and resurrection of compared to the acquisition.
Anyway, before we come to that, because a lot of people would have argued that, okay, those refineries, maybe government should have actually privatized them instead of rehabilitating them. But let's look at the valuation. $19 billion seems like a huge amount for, a refinery. The NNPC is purchasing 20% stake now. What are the risks there, or are there none, both for NNPC and for Dangote?
Well, you see, the reason profit is defined as the reward for risk taken, right? So Dangote committed himself to billions of dollars of investment and expects to get a reward. NNPC is also making a strategic decision and expects to get a reward. Some people say, why didn't NNPC before now buy into international refineries in Rotterdam and all of that? But okay, like they say, it's better late than never, but better to buy your own than to buy others. Mm-hmm. Now, the risk of overvaluation, you see, what the government has committed is that NNPC go and purchase 20% stake in Dangote. The process is like you're sending somebody to the market, go and buy me, so. You're not going to say the price at which. The pricing of that project will be discussed and negotiated, hopefully in a transparent manner, so that everybody will see it, because this is a massive $19 billion investment. $19 billion is significant. It's not only significant, it is substantial. And to put it in context, the entire the GDP of Rwanda is $10 billion. This project is 100% higher than the entire Rwandan economy. So that just to give you some perspective.
Oh, yes.
Therefore, they're going to the table. Obviously, there'll be international audit firms, and it has to be an open and transparent process to see that Nigerians and Nigerian taxpayers are not being taken for a ride. I think that's very important, and that in this day of the social media, internet, and all that, it is very unlikely and almost impossible to do things that nobody will find out. There are prices. Refineries are being constructed today, so everybody knows what is a 650,000 million barrels per day refinery, single train. What does it mean, right? And therefore, it is hoped, and I believe strongly, that the process, this is the authorization to go and invest, but the process of investment and the price and all that will be open book. Everybody will see it. And if anything, in any case, nothing untoward is likely to happen. Okay,
but you did mention, that hope Nigerians won't be taken, for a ride there. So, what protection is there for the, ordinary Nigerian that's going to be paying for this product?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's start by saying what is the benefit to the ordinary Nigerian? Because the price is what you pay for the benefits received, right? So the Nigerian is likely and probably guaranteed to have constant flow of fuel in petrol, kerosene, diesel, and all the other products, right, from a fractional distillation column. Now, is the Nigerian, pardon my French, is the Nigerian citizen going to be screwed by this? I don't think so, because we just talked about the pricing, right? And it's open. If the Nigerian citizen, who in all fairness has been ravaged all of these years, and now they need to be relieved from this pressure, I don't think anybody will accept it. The entire world knows refineries are not things that you're building a house. Everybody knows what the price of a refinery is, and therefore you pay. But if the refinery as a structure, it means nothing if it's not producing. So the real question is, when and how will the Nigerian citizen benefit from this and make sure that he has effective petrol in the station rather than spending 3-4 hours. Remember the days we have 3-4 hours. As a matter of fact, there was a release today saying that DPR is going to be monitoring 33,000 petrol stations.
That are smuggling.
No, come on, please. There will be no more smuggling.
All right, now what was it? Dangote Refinery, maybe at some point, will be publicly, quoted. Do you foresee the government selling off its shareholdings?
Well, let me say this, that the government will be a shareholder, right? Typically, the government is not in the business of, right? So I believe that somewhere down the road, the government will divest, because the government will use its resources to build infrastructure and roads, airports, and all of that. So once that is up and going, and the price of the investment is lucrative, and there's a modest return, the government may decide to hold, but the government may not. But look, let us ask ourselves, has the government sold its interest in LNG? No. The government gets something like almost $12 billion a year from gas. So if it's profitable, which I think it is, it will be. Don't forget, let us look at Dangote Cement. Dangote Cement grew their revenues by 34% in the last year, when manufacturing itself grew by only 10% and the GDP grew by only 0.5%. So it had performed the GDP as a whole, it had performed the manufacturing sector, and it also outperformed competitors and paid significant amount of taxes. But that's just, MTN did the same. MTN is even thinking of building roads. The revenues grew by over 54%. So government investment in private sector, well-managed companies, and using the profit to provide healthcare, education, and things for the people may be a good strategy.
So you're saying that the total benefit outweighs the opportunity costs, or direct and opportunity costs?
So it appears. And also the track record of the investments themselves also give us confidence that this may not be a bad deal. But in anything, there's always a risk of the unknowns.
Okay, we'll see how that goes. Thank you very much, Mr. Rewane. We do appreciate
Thank you for having me.
Your time. All right. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll look at the planned Eurobond issuance by the federal government. Do stay with us.